I stepped through my own front door, carrying a single duffel bag and a paper plate of lukewarm, welcome home lasagna, and the first thing I noticed was that my coat rack was gone. Not broken, not moved, gone. In its place stood a gold balloon arch that read, "Welcome back, Vanessa," with glitter falling onto my hardwood floor, like cheap confetti at a divorce party. My parents clapped as if I'd just won a game show instead of returned from an 18-month deployment. "Look who's home," my mother Diane said, rushing toward me with a smile so wide it felt rehearsed. My father Richard stood beside her, holding a phone up to record, because apparently my arrival was content now. Behind them, the living room was full. Aunts, uncles, neighbors I barely knew, and people I definitely did not invite into the house I paid for with my own military salary. Then I saw her, Megan. My younger sister floated out from the kitchen, wearing a silk cream-colored dress that hugged a round belly I had never seen before today. She moved like she was walking on a runway, one hand resting delicately under her bump, the other holding a glass of sparkling water that suspiciously smelled like champagne. "Surprise," she said. I blinked once, then again, because the last time I'd seen Megan in person, she was crying in a coffee shop about being $40,000 in credit card debt and dating a man who thought investment strategy meant sports betting. And now she was pregnant, with twins, engaged, radiant, in my living room. My mother grabbed my shoulders. "Megan has wonderful news. Isn't it perfect timing, family destiny, all of it?" People started clapping again. Someone whistled. Someone handed Megan a tiny stuffed elephant like we were already in a baby shower. I smiled, because soldiers are trained to keep their faces neutral when walking into chaos. "Congratulations," I said. "That's big news." Megan's eyes glimmered. "Ethan is in the den. He wanted to meet you." From the other room, a tall man in a crisp blue blazer waved. He looked like he came pre-installed with a credit score above 800. So far, I was processing this well. Then my mother guided me toward the dining table where a stack of papers sat neatly in front of a pen. "Sweetheart," she said, voice dropping into that tone parents use when they're about to sell your organs on the black market. "We need to talk about something important." I glanced at the papers. Real estate forms, legal headings, my name printed in bold. My father cleared his throat. Now that Megan is starting a family, she needs stability. And this house, well, it's perfect for her. I stared at him. "This is my house." Richard nodded like I'd made a minor observation about the weather. "Exactly, and you're a military officer. You're used to hardship. You'll be deployed again. You don't need a big house sitting empty." Megan placed a hand on her belly and sighed dramatically. "Think of the babies, Vanessa." The room quieted. Every guest suddenly interested in my reaction like this was live television. I looked around at the people standing on my floors, leaning on my counters, drinking from glasses I bought. I had spent years saving, skipping vacations, buying used furniture, fixing leaky pipes myself. I bought this place at 26 while Megan was still deciding which yoga studio matched her energy. I set my duffel bag down slowly. "You're asking me to give my house away," I said. My mother pushed the papers closer. "Not give, transfer. It's a family decision." I stared at her. A family decision made while I was overseas. My father gave a small chuckle. "Don't be dramatic. That word, dramatic. The same word they used when I worked 3 jobs in high school because Megan needed self-discovery trips. The same word when I joined the army to pay for my own college, while Megan got tuition checks signed with my parents' smiling faces." Megan stepped closer, lowering her voice, just enough to feel personal. "You don't have kids. You don't even have a boyfriend. What do you need a big house for, to polish your medals?" A few guests laughed, not loudly, just enough. I breathed in through my nose, out through my mouth. "Where would I live?" I asked. My mother brightened. "We found a lovely extended stay apartment near your base. Very efficient. Efficient, like a storage unit with plumbing." My gaze dropped to the front porch through the glass door. That's when I saw it. Black trash bags, lined neatly outside. My framed photos, my blankets, my kitchen mixer, even my running shoes. Packed, labeled, ready. Not a plan, not a suggestion, already done. The room tilted slightly, but my feet stayed planted. Military training is great for many things. Not punching family members in public is one of them. I looked at Megan. "You packed my things." She smiled. "Mom said it would help you transition faster." I let out a short laugh. Transition, like I'm retiring from existence. Another beat of silence. Then my father tapped the papers. "Sign, Vanessa. Do the right thing." I looked at the pen, the forms, the belly, the crowd. Then I looked at the house. my house. And I realized something simple. They weren't asking. They had already decided. So I straightened my shoulders, picked up the pen, and paused long enough for everyone to lean forward waiting. Before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you something. Have you ever worked your way up from nothing built something with your own hands, and then had the people who should love you most look at it and say, "That's ours now," like your effort was just a free trial they never intended to pay for? I uncapped the pen. I set the pen back down without signing, picked up my duffel bag, and walked out through my front door while my family stood frozen behind me like background actors who just realized the scene wasn't going as scripted. No one stopped me. No one called my name. The gold balloon arch swayed in the doorway as I stepped past the trash bags, holding my life like it was cheering for the wrong team. I loaded what I could into my car. Not everything fit. I left my couch, my bookshelves, and a blender I never really liked anyway. Then I drove to the extended stay apartment my mother had already booked for me because, of course, she had. The room smelled like industrial lemon cleaner and broken dreams. One bed, one dresser, a microwave that sounded like a helicopter trying to take off. I placed my duffel bag on the floor and stood there for a moment, still wearing my boots, still feeling like I'd just walked out of a mission that ended in friendly fire. I showered. I ate a protein bar. I sat on the bed and stared at the beige wall, and something inside me quietly shifted. Not sadness, not anger. Assessment. That night's sleep didn't come. Instead, old memories did. Me at 16 working a double shift at a diner, carrying plates heavier than my backpack, while Megan was in Costa Rica finding herself. Me counting tips to buy my own textbooks while my parents were wiring money for Megan's emergency shopping situation. Me signing enlistment papers at 18, hearing my mother say, "At least one of my daughters will have discipline," like it was both a compliment and a sentence. I didn't resent hard work. I resented the pattern. I always paid. Megan always received. By morning, the pattern wasn't just emotional anymore. It was strategic. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking apps. Everything looked normal. Then I checked my military benefits account. There it was, a new authorized representative, my father's name. I stared at the screen, refreshed, same result. I pulled up my email. A confirmation message from a legal service. Subject line, power of attorney, successfully filed. I hadn't filed anything. I clicked the document. My signature was there, except it wasn't mine. Close, similar, but wrong in the tiny ways that matter when you've signed your name on official military paperwork 1,000 times. They hadn't just tried to take my house. They were trying to take me out of my own life. A power of attorney doesn't just let someone handle a few errands. It lets them move your money, sell your property, make legal decisions in your name. With the wrong doctor's note, it could even support a claim that I wasn't mentally fit to manage my own affairs. Which explained the sudden urgency, the packing, the apartment, the push to make me look like the unstable one walking away from family. I sat very still on the bed. Then I smiled, because if there was one thing the Army had taught me, it was this. When someone tries to control the battlefield, you study their structure and find the weak points. I drove back to the base legal office that afternoon. A captain behind a desk reviewed the documents, then looked up at me slowly. "You did not sign this," he said. "No, sir. This is fraud." "Yes, sir." He nodded once, the way officers do when a situation just became official. "We'll open a case file. In the meantime, do not confront them. Let them think their plan is working." I walked out of the office with a folder in my hand and a new clarity in my chest, so I did exactly that. I stopped calling. I didn't text. I let my parents assume I had accepted my new life as the obedient daughter who knew her place. I let Megan believe she was now queen of my castle, ruler of my kitchen, guardian of my walk-in closet. I even sent one short message. "Hey," settled into the apartment. "Hope everything is going smoothly with the house. Congrats again," Megan replied instantly. "Thanks, it's perfect. You should come by sometime." I didn't answer. Instead, I drove past my old street that evening, just once, slow, casual, like a neighbor out for a jog. Lights were on, music was playing, my porch plants were already dead. Someone had rearranged the living room furniture, and I could see a new white rug where my dark one used to be. They were nesting. Good. Because people who feel safe make mistakes. Back in my apartment, I opened the control app for my home security system, the one I had installed 2 years ago, the one my parents never bothered to learn how to use, the one they assumed was just smoke detection and door sensors. Every camera was online, every angle clear. I watched Megan walk into my kitchen, open my fridge, and pour herself a glass of wine. Then she pulled a second glass. and a third, pregnant with twins supposedly. She laughed at something on her phone and took a long drink. I watched without blinking. Then she walked to the hallway mirror, lifted her dress slightly, and adjusted something under the fabric around her stomach. Her reflection moved in ways real pregnancy doesn't. She stepped back, inspected herself, and smirked. "Oh, Vanessa," she said to her own reflection, "you really were the easiest one to get rid of." I paused the video, saved the clip, backed it up twice. I leaned back on the bed in my small temporary room and let out a slow breath. They thought I had walked away. They thought I had surrendered, but I wasn't gone. I was just repositioning. I woke up before my alarm sat on the edge of the bed and opened the camera feed again. Megan was in my kitchen barefoot wearing one of my old oversized t-shirts. She stretched, yawned, and walked without the careful protective movements pregnant women naturally have. No guarding the belly, no slow shifting of weight, just normal, loose, careless motion. I'd spent years learning how to evaluate structures under stress. Bridges, supply chains, field installations. You study where tension builds, where weight shifts, where collapse will start. Families weren't that different. You just had to stop thinking emotionally and start thinking mechanically. So I created a routine. Every morning before work, I checked the feeds. Every night before sleep, I checked again. Not obsessively, methodically, like monitoring a perimeter. Megan's behavior followed patterns. She drank wine at dinner, real wine. Not grape juice in a fancy glass. She ordered sushi deliveries with raw fish. She wore tight dresses that compressed her stomach flat when she thought no one was watching. Then before guests arrived, she disappeared into the bedroom and emerged with a rounder silhouette and slower steps. My parents hovered around her like attendants in a royal court. They brought her tea. They adjusted pillows behind her back. They spoke about the babies in hushed, reverent tones. None of them noticed the small inconsistencies. Because they weren't trained to. I was. One afternoon I took a personal day and drove to a cafe across the street from the house. I sat by the window with a laptop open pretending to work on logistics reports. At noon, Megan walked out the front door in workout leggings and a sports bra. No belly. She jogged down the sidewalk at a steady pace. Pregnant with twins, supposedly in her third trimester, jogging without support gear, without discomfort, without any visible bump. I recorded it on my phone. She returned 40 minutes later, went inside. 10 minutes after that, she stepped back out wearing a loose maternity dress, and the belly was back. I saved that video too. By the end of the week, I had a folder full of small cracks, not enough yet to break the structure, but enough to prove it was hollow. I needed more, something undeniable, so I leaned into the role they'd written for me. I sent my mother a text. "Apartment is fine. I'm adjusting. Let me know if you need anything." She responded with a heart emoji and a prayer hands emoji because nothing says love like outsourced guilt. I sent Megan a message too. "Hey, sorry I left so suddenly. Just needed space. Hope the pregnancy is going smoothly." She replied 5 seconds later. "All good. You know how family comes first." I stared at that line for a moment and laughed quietly in my car. Family comes first, except when it's you. That weekend I showed up at the house unannounced, not in uniform, just jeans, plain shirt, neutral expression. My mother opened the door like she'd been waiting behind it. "Vanessa, you're here, come in, come in." Inside the house smelled like roasted chicken and expensive perfume. My old living room furniture had been rearranged. A large floral couch now sat where my recliner used to be. A pastel baby blanket was draped over it like a flag claiming territory. Megan waddled in from the kitchen, hand under her belly, playing the role perfectly now that an audience existed. "Look who decided to visit," she said. I smiled. Thought I'd check in, see how everyone's doing. My father glanced at me briefly, then went back to cutting meat like nothing unusual had ever happened. We sat at the table. My mother served food. Megan talked nonstop about baby names, nursery colors, how Ethan's parents were so excited to finally be grandparents. I listened, asked questions, played the part of the supportive sister who had accepted her reduced place in the family hierarchy. Halfway through dinner, Megan stood up suddenly. "Bathroom," she said, patting her belly. "Babies are sitting on my bladder again." She left her phone on the table, unlocked. She'd never been careful, not once in her life. I picked up the phone calmly and walked to the hallway where the security system panel sat inside a cabinet. I knew the passcode. I'd installed it. I turned off the hallway camera, then I placed her phone face down on the counter and turned on the bedroom camera remotely from my own device. Megan returned a few minutes later. Dinner continued. Wine flowed. My mother poured Megan a glass without hesitation. Half an hour later, Megan excused herself again, complaining about back pain this time. She walked to the bedroom. I waited. 1 minute, 2. Then I opened the live feed. Megan stood in front of the mirror. She lifted her dress, unfastened a Velcro strap, pulled a rounded foam prosthetic away from her body and dropped it on the bed. Her stomach was flat. Completely flat. She rolled her shoulders, stretched like someone finally taking off tight shoes after a long day. God, I hate this thing, she muttered to herself. She picked up the fake belly again, repositioned it, tightened the strap, and smoothed the dress back down. Then she leaned closer to the mirror, tilted her head, and smiled. They bought it, she said. Every single one of them. She laughed, a sharp, satisfied sound. Especially Vanessa. Miss Army Hero walked right out like a good little soldier. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her soon enough. And once the house is sold, I'm free. She paused, admiring herself. No kids, no work, no debt. Perfect life. I recorded every second. The door opened. My mother stepped in, asking if she was okay. Megan instantly switched posture, voice soft, hand cradling her belly again. I turned off the feed. Back at the table, I sat down with my plate and continued eating as if nothing had happened. My father asked about my work. I answered casually. My mother asked if the apartment was comfortable. I said it was fine. Megan smiled at me across the table with a sweetness that would have fooled anyone without video proof, saved to 3 separate drives. By the time dessert was served, I had what I needed. Not emotion, not suspicion, evidence, clean, clear, undeniable. I stood up to leave. My mother hugged me tightly. My father patted my shoulder like I was a colleague. Megan kissed my cheek. Come again soon, she said. I smiled back. Oh, I will, and I meant it. I drove back to my apartment with both hands steady on the wheel and a folder of video files quietly syncing to a secure cloud. The night air felt cold through the cracked window, but my mind was clear for the first time since I'd walked out of that front door. Evidence of a fake pregnancy was satisfying. But it wasn't enough. Because Megan didn't fake a pregnancy just to play house. She did it for money, and money always leaves a trail. I parked, walked upstairs, unlocked my door, and dialed a number I hadn't used in 2 years. Marcus picked up on the second ring. Staff Sergeant Cole, he said. Captain Hayes, I replied. He paused. You don't call unless something's wrong. Something's very wrong. 30 minutes later, Marcus sat at the tiny round table in my apartment, balancing his laptop between 2 cups of bad instant coffee. He was a former military investigator turned private security consultant. Short hair, sharp eyes, and the kind of calm that made people confess just to fill silence. I handed him a flash drive. He watched the footage without a word. Megan jogging with no belly, removing the prosthetic, drinking wine, laughing at her reflection. When the last clip ended, Marcus leaned back. Yeah, he said. That's fraud. Medical fraud, I said. Financial fraud. An identity fraud with the power of attorney. And this house, he added. They can't sell it yet, right? Not without my signature. Then the pregnancy is leverage, he said. They're trying to make you look heartless if you resist. Exactly. Marcus opened a new folder on his laptop. Let's follow the money. He started with insurance records. Prenatal care usually leaves digital footprints. Doctor visits, lab work, ultrasound billing codes. 10 minutes later, he frowned. Your sister has no legitimate OBGYN records, he said. Maybe she's paying cash. He shook his head. Even cash clinics log patient IDs. There's nothing. He typed faster fingers, moving like they'd been trained for war too. Then he whistled once. There is something, he said. A small private clinic across town. 1 ultrasound charge. Paid in full, cash. No insurance submission. I leaned closer. Who performed it? Marcus clicked again. A nurse practitioner. License number here. No supervising physician attached. I sat back. That's not standard. Not even close, he said. He cross-referenced the clinic address, then the nurse's name, then her known associates. After another 10 minutes, Marcus turned the laptop toward me. A transaction history. Multiple payments, large amounts, routed through a family trust account. My family's trust account. Your parents pulled money from the trust, Marcus said. Transferred to an intermediary account. That account paid the nurse. I stared at the screen. $50,000, I said quietly. Marcus nodded. To buy fake medical documentation. I exhaled slowly through my nose. So they're all in on it? Yes, Marcus said. But there's more. He clicked again and pulled up another list of transactions tied to Megan's personal accounts. Dozens of outgoing transfers, crypto exchanges, high-risk investment platforms, loan apps with obscene interest rates. Marcus pointed at the negative balance. She's deep in debt, he said. Hundreds of thousands. Maybe more if she's hiding wallets. I didn't feel shocked. Only confirmed. which means Marcus continued the house isn't for the babies. It's collateral. She wants to sell it. Fast. And disappear, I said. Marcus nodded. Exactly. He closed the laptop. Now he said here's the dangerous part. If they've already filed a fraudulent power of attorney, the next step is to challenge your mental fitness. They'll say you're unstable, overworked, emotionally compromised by deployment. It's a common tactic in financial abuse cases. I laughed once without humor. So their plan was never just to take my house. Marcus didn't smile. No. Their plan was to take you out of the equation completely. I stood up and walked to the small window overlooking the parking lot. My reflection in the glass looked calm, controlled, focused. This isn't a family problem anymore, I said. It's a legal and criminal one. Marcus stood beside me. Then we treat it that way, he said. Over the next week, we worked quietly. Marcus compiled every financial record, every transaction, every false medical entry, every clip from the security system, every communication message Megan sent bragging about the pregnancy. I filed an official fraud report through military legal channels. That ensured jurisdiction, that ensured consequences, that ensured no one could bury this with a family apology. Meanwhile, I continued playing the obedient daughter. I texted my mother. I answered politely when she called. I congratulated Megan on doctor updates. I said I was proud of her. And each time I hung up, Marcus added another timestamp to the evidence log. One afternoon, Megan sent me a message. We're thinking of doing a big gender reveal party. Ethan wants it fancy, at the house. You should come. Family moment. I stared at the message. A public event. Dozens of witnesses. A stage they were building themselves. I typed back. I wouldn't miss it. Marcus looked over my shoulder. They're getting confident, he said. Good, I replied. People who feel safe talk too much. He closed his laptop. Then we set the trap. I smiled. Exactly. I walked into the restaurant 10 minutes late on purpose. Not dramatic late, just late enough to make them wonder if I'd changed my mind. Late enough to give them time to sit, order drinks, and start feeling in control of the situation. The place was upscale, but not outrageous. White tablecloths, low lighting, waiters who said excellent choice no matter what you ordered. Megan had picked it, of course. She always chose settings that made her feel like she'd already won. My parents were seated on one side of the table. Megan sat at the head, belly forward, hand resting on it like a queen guarding the crown jewels. Ethan sat beside her, smiling politely, the only person in the room who didn't know he was a supporting character in a crime. When they saw me, all four faces lit up in practiced relief. There she is, my mother said. We were worried you wouldn't come. I slid into the chair opposite Megan. I said I'd be here, I replied. I keep my word. My father lifted his glass. To family, he said. We all raised our glasses. I touched mine to theirs, took a small sip and set it down. No warmth, no reconciliation, just positioning. Dinner started with small talk. My job, Megan's cravings, Ethan's parents, my mother's new Pilates class, my father's latest golf score. It was like watching a sitcom where every character pretended the pilot episode hadn't ended with theft and betrayal. Halfway through the main course, my mother dabbed her lips with a napkin and leaned forward. So she said we wanted to discuss a few final details. My father reached into a leather folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Again, different restaurant, same script. He slid them toward me. These are simple acknowledgements, he said. Just confirming that you won't contest the house transfer or any family trust decisions. With the babies coming, we need to protect Megan's stability. Megan smiled softly, like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth or under her fake belly. I looked down at the documents. Heavy legal language, signature lines waiting for me like open traps. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed my own folder on the table. Thick, official looking, red stamp on the front. The kind that makes people sit up straighter without reading a word. What's that? My father asked. I smiled. My paperwork. My mother's eyes brightened. Oh, sweetheart, did you finally realize we're just trying to help you? Is this you agreeing to the plan? I opened the folder slowly. Inside were blank sheets. No real documents. Just clean paper clipped neatly together. Megan leaned forward, trying to see the content. Looks important, she said. It is, I replied. Very important. Then I did something simple. I let my phone vibrate on the table. A new text message appeared on the screen facing them. Congratulations on your patent bonus. $17 million will be released to your account upon final clearance. Silence. My mother gasped. My father's eyes widened. Ethan blinked. Once, twice. Megan froze. I picked up the phone casually and looked at the message. Wow, I said. They finally approved it. My father cleared his throat. Approved. What? I leaned back in my chair. A defense logistics patent I filed last year. Supply chain encryption. It just cleared final review. I let that sit. $17 million. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Vanessa, that's incredible. My father stared at me with a new light in his eyes. Not pride. Calculation. Ethan smiled politely. That's impressive. Congratulations. Megan said nothing. She just watched me, carefully, like a gambler realizing the other player had more chips than expected. I closed my folder and slid it slightly toward myself. So I said before I sign anything, I figured we should talk about family resources. Because if I'm about to receive that kind of money, I want to make sure it's managed properly. My father leaned forward immediately. Of course, he said. Family decisions. We're here for you. My mother nodded. We can help protect it. Guide you. Megan placed both hands on her belly and tilted her head. And think of the babies, she said softly. They'll need a safe future too. There it was. The hook. I let a small smile form. You're right, I said. Family should share responsibility. Megan's voice grew sweeter. Exactly, and since you don't plan on having children, maybe we could... She stopped herself just short of finishing the sentence. But everyone at the table knew what came next. Share the money, give it to her, secure her future. Complete the transfer. My father slid the papers closer again. So he said, tapping the signature line, we just need your cooperation and everything will be settled nicely. I looked at the pen, then at their faces. My mother glowing with anticipation. My father already spending money that wasn't his. Megan vibrating with barely contained greed behind her gentle pregnant act. Ethan confused but silent. I picked up the pen and turned it slowly between my fingers. No rush, no pressure. Just letting the moment stretch long enough for them to believe they'd won. Then I set the pen down again. I agree, I said. Everything should be settled nicely. Megan exhaled relief flickering in her eyes. My father smiled broadly. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And right then I knew the trap was set. They just hadn't heard it click yet. I stepped out of my car and adjusted the collar of my dress uniform, the dark blue fabric sitting sharp against my shoulders. Medals, ribbons, polished shoes, the full presentation. If they wanted a show, I could give them one. Music thumped through the walls of my house before I even reached the front door. Valets were parking cars along the curb. Pink and blue balloons climbed the porch rails. A giant banner stretched across my balcony. Baby reveal of the century subtle was never Megan's thing. I walked past the crowd gathering outside. Women in designer dresses, men in pressed jackets, phones already raised ready to record whatever spectacle Megan had planned. No one paid attention to me at first. I was just another guest arriving late. Until someone noticed the uniform. Heads turned, whispers started. A few people straightened their posture instinctively. Military uniforms have that effect. They don't need introductions. I walked through the front door. My front door. Inside the house looked like a wedding, a baby shower, and a social media convention had collided and lost control. Glitter on the floor. Champagne towers. A dessert table shaped like a crib. A professional photographer directing people like a movie set. My mother spotted me first. Vanessa, she called, rushing over. You made it. She hugged me quickly, but her hands lingered on my sleeves, smoothing imaginary wrinkles. Appearances mattered, even now. My father followed, smile wide and proud, as if the uniform suddenly made me valuable again. You look impressive, he said. I nodded once. Thank you. Megan appeared at the top of the staircase. She paused there deliberately, letting the crowd see her. White silk gown, hair done, makeup perfect, hand under her belly. A walking fairy tale financed by fraud. Everyone, she called out, thank you for coming to celebrate my growing family. Applause filled the room. I stayed still near the entrance. Megan descended the stairs slowly, carefully controlling each step. She reached the floor and moved through the guests, accepting compliments, posing for photos, laughing lightly, with one hand always on her stomach like a prop that needed reminding to stay in place. Ethan stood beside her, smiling like a man who believed he'd won the lottery without realizing the ticket was counterfeit. When Megan finally reached me, her smile tightened. You came, she said quietly. I said I would, I replied. She looked me up and down. You wore the uniform. I did. Trying to steal my spotlight, I smiled slightly. You have plenty of spotlight. Her eyes flickered, but she leaned in and hugged me anyway. For the cameras. Family, she whispered. Family, I whispered back. My mother clapped her hands. All right, everyone. We're about to reveal the gender. Guests gathered around the center of the living room, where a massive cake waited on a decorated table. Pink and blue lights crisscrossed the ceiling. Phones were raised again. Influencers had tripods. Megan stood proudly beside the cake holding a large silver knife. Ethan put his arm around her. My parents stood behind them like proud monarchs witnessing a coronation. I stayed near the edge of the crowd, then I stepped forward. The room quieted just a little. Uniforms do that too. Before the reveal, I said, voice steady and clear, I brought something special for the parents-to-be. Megan blinked. Oh, I lifted a small envelope. A gift, I said. Something symbolic. Megan's greed pushed aside caution instantly. Oh my God, Vanessa, that's so sweet, she said loudly for the audience. Everyone look, my sister brought a gift. Phones turned toward us. Perfect. Megan took the envelope and opened it. Inside was a printed copy of a legal notice. Official seals, bold text. The kind of paper that kills smiles on contact. She skimmed the first line. Her face changed. What is this, she hissed under her breath. I leaned in just enough. It's a formal notice of investigation, I said quietly. Fraud, financial exploitation, identity falsification. Megan's fingers tightened around the paper. My mother stepped closer, confused. Vanessa, what are you doing? I raised my voice slightly, still calm. I invited someone else too, I said. A man stepped in through the front door behind me. Gray suit, leather briefcase, sharp eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, this is attorney Samuel Grant representing me in an ongoing case concerning fraudulent property seizure and falsified medical records. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan's arms slowly loosened from around Megan. My father's smile disappeared. My mother's face drained of color. Megan forced a laugh. Vanessa, this isn't funny. You're ruining my event. Attorney Grant stepped forward. Ms. Megan Hayes, he said, voice firm. You are formally notified that evidence has been submitted regarding falsified prenatal documentation, fraudulent financial transfers, and attempted illegal sale of protected property. Protected property, that phrase landed heavy. My father swallowed hard. Protected, I stepped closer. This house, I said, was registered as protected military residence property when I deployed overseas. Any attempt to transfer or sell it without my consent is a federal offense. My mother's wine glass trembled in her hand. Guests stepped back slowly, sensing they'd walked into something far beyond a baby party. Megan's voice rose. You're lying. You're jealous. You've always been jealous. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Am I asked. Because the evidence says otherwise. Megan's eyes darted around the room. Phones were still recording, but no one was cheering anymore. No one was clapping. No one was smiling. Only watching. Ethan stepped away from her completely. What evidence, he asked. Megan turned toward him, panicked. Don't listen to her, she's trying to destroy us. Attorney Grant opened his briefcase. We have video footage, he said. Financial records, medical transaction trails, security logs. Megan's breathing sped up. My father reached for her arm. Megan, tell me this isn't true. She jerked away. My mother whispered, the babies. Megan clutched her belly protectively, as if shielding it from exposure. Then she screamed. You're all against me. The sound cracked through the silent room. Guests backed away further. The photographer lowered his camera. Influencers stopped filming. Champagne flutes sat untouched on silver trays. I looked at my sister. Not with anger, not with sadness, with certainty. And in that moment, the glitter, the balloons, the silk dress, the curated perfection around her, all looked exactly like what they were. A stage built on a lie. And the audience had finally stopped applauding. I stepped forward once more, and the crowd parted without me asking. It reminded me of walking through base inspections when presence alone signaled that something serious was happening. I took the microphone from the stunned event host, who handed it over like it was a live grenade. My voice carried easily across the room. I'm not here to argue about feelings, I said. I'm here to state facts. Phones were still raised, but no one spoke. Even the music had stopped. Someone somewhere had decided this wasn't a party anymore. Attorney Grant stood beside me, opening a folder thick enough to double as a weapon. I clicked a small remote in my hand. The television above the fireplace turned on. The first video played. Megan in my kitchen, barefoot, drinking wine. Time-stamped. Clear, undeniable. Murmurs moved through the crowd. Next video. Megan jogging outside with no pregnancy bump. Smooth, steady stride. No discomfort. Next, bedroom footage. Megan removing the prosthetic belly, flat stomach, laughing at her reflection. Someone gasped loudly. Another person covered their mouth. I kept my eyes on my parents. My mother's face collapsed inward like a structure losing support. My father's jaw tightened as if clenching hard enough could change reality. I switched the screen again. Financial records, transactions, highlighted amounts. $50,000 transferred from the family trust, paid to a clinic, paid to a nurse with no supervising physician, paid to buy fake ultrasound results. Attorney Grant's voice cut through the silence. These documents have been verified by forensic accountants. These funds were withdrawn without proper authorization and used to purchase fraudulent medical documentation. I watched Megan. She was shaking now. Not dramatically, not theatrically, real tremors, real fear. Ethan stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on the screen. "You told me there were doctor visits," he said. "You showed me pictures." Megan grabbed his arm. "I can explain." He pulled away. My father cleared his throat, voice hoarse. "Vanessa, sweetheart, we didn't know it was this serious." I looked at him. "You filed a power of attorney in my name while I was deployed." My mother whispered, "We were trying to protect you." I didn't raise my voice. "By taking control of my income, my property, and my legal rights." My father looked at the floor. Attorney Grant stepped forward again. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes," he said. "Fraudulent power of attorney filings and attempts to liquidate protected military property constitute federal offenses." The words federal offenses landed harder than any shout could. At the front door, two men in dark jackets stepped inside. Not rushing, not aggressive, just present, badges visible, professional, federal agents. One of them nodded to Attorney Grant. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. No one moved to clean it. Megan's breathing spiraled faster. She grabbed her belly again, clutching it like a shield. "This is harassment," she shouted. "I'm pregnant. You can't do this to me." I stepped closer. "Then prove it," I said. Her eyes widened. Attorney Grant opened another folder. "I requested an emergency court-authorized medical verification for the safety of the alleged unborn children," he said. "A certified obstetric specialist is present on site." The crowd parted again. A woman in medical scrubs walked in carrying a compact mobile ultrasound unit. Professional, calm, neutral. Megan shook her head violently. No, you can't do this here." The doctor's voice was steady. "This is a non-invasive procedure. If there are viable fetuses, this protects their legal rights. If there are none, it protects the court from continued deception." My mother whispered, "Megan, just let her check." My father didn't speak. He couldn't. Ethan's face had gone pale. He looked like a man watching his future evaporate in real time. Megan backed away. The federal agent stepped slightly closer, not touching, just closing space. Megan's voice broke. "I'm not some criminal," I spoke quietly. "You made yourself one." The doctor rolled the ultrasound machine forward. Guests pressed against the walls now. No phones raised, no whispers, just breathing and disbelief. Megan's hands shook as she lifted the hem of her dress slightly. The fake belly was still strapped underneath. The doctor applied gel to the probe. Cold, clinical, ordinary. She placed it against the surface of Megan's belly. The screen lit up. Static waves, blank space, no heartbeat, no movement, no life. The room went silent in a way that swallowed sound. The doctor adjusted angles, increased sensitivity, checked again, nothing. Megan stared at the screen. My mother covered her mouth with both hands. My father's shoulders slumped as if someone had cut his strings. Ethan stepped back another full pace away from Megan. The doctor turned off the device. "There is no pregnancy," she said. "No theatrics, no accusation, just truth." The words hung in the air, heavier than the chandelier above us. Megan ripped the Velcro strap from under her dress and threw the prosthetic belly onto the floor. It landed with a dull, synthetic thud, a perfect symbol of everything. She screamed then, raw, animal, cornered. This was supposed to work. I was supposed to get free. One of the federal agents stepped forward. "Ms. Megan Hayes, you are under arrest for fraud, falsification of medical records, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit property seizure." Another agent turned to my parents. "Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, you are under arrest for aiding fraudulent financial transactions, identity falsification, and attempted unlawful transfer of protected property." My mother started crying. My father said nothing as his hands were cuffed. Ethan just stood there, motionless, staring at the fake belly on the floor, like it had personally betrayed him. Guests quietly moved aside as the agents escorted them out. No shouting, no resistance, just collapse. I stood in the center of my living room as the last of the glitter floated down from a pop balloon arch and landed at my feet. No music, no applause, just truth finally taking up space where lies used to live. The front door closed behind the last federal agent with a sound so final it echoed through the entryway. Then nothing. No music, no talking, no footsteps. Just silence swallowing a house that had hosted 100 fake celebrations. I stood where I was still holding the microphone. My fingers loosened and it dropped gently onto the carpet with a soft thud. No one reacted. There was no audience left to perform for. Glitter drifted down from a half-deflated balloon arch. A pink balloon rolled slowly across the marble floor and bumped into the discarded prosthetic belly. A decoration meeting a lie. The doctor unplugged her ultrasound machine, wiped the probe, and packed everything with quiet professionalism. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. Her job had been truth. She delivered it and moved on. Attorney Grant stepped beside me. "I'll handle the formal statements," he said. "You don't need to speak to anyone without me present." I nodded once. He left through the side door. Efficient, clean, controlled. I was alone in the house, not metaphorically, physically. I walked into the living room, my living room, the one that used to smell like my coffee and my laundry detergent and my life. Now it smelled like spilled champagne, cold air, and the aftermath of exposure. I picked up the fake belly from the floor. It was lighter than it looked. Cheap foam wrapped in synthetic fabric. Velcro straps, a mass-produced product meant for costume shops and low-budget theater. My sister had built her empire on this. I dropped it into a trash bag. Then I walked to the kitchen, my kitchen, the one Megan had used as her stage. I opened every cabinet door and looked inside, nothing missing, because they hadn't wanted my dishes, they'd wanted my identity. I poured myself a glass of water, my hands were steady, my breathing normal, no trembling, no delayed breakdown, no cinematic collapse, just quiet. I sat at the kitchen island and drank slowly. A few minutes later, headlights washed across the front windows. Another car arrived, not police, not media, not neighbors, Ethan. He stood outside for a long moment before knocking. When I opened the door, he looked like a man who had aged 10 years in an hour. "I'm not here to argue," he said. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked into the living room, looked at the remnants of the party, the deflated balloons, the half-eaten cake, the empty glasses. "She told me we were having twins," he said quietly. She showed me ultrasound pictures. She cried in my arms about morning sickness. I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. He swallowed. "I put my parents' savings into wedding planning deposits," he said. "I told them we were building a family." He turned toward me. "I didn't know. I swear to you I didn't know." I believed him. Not because he asked, but because deception recognizes its own, and he wasn't part of it. He reached into his jacket and handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "A personal check," he said. "To help repair anything damaged, and an apology." I didn't open it. "I don't need it," I said. He blinked. "You just went through. I don't need anything tied to this," I said, "including money that comes from it." He nodded slowly, accepting the boundary without argument. "I'm sorry," he said again. Then he left. No drama, no begging, just a man walking away from a life that had never existed. The door closed behind him. Silence again. I walked upstairs. The bedroom Megan had claimed as her maternity suite was still filled with pastel decorations. A crib that had never held a baby. Shelves lined with stuffed animals that had never been touched. A changing table with folded diapers that would never be used. I stood in the doorway and looked at it for a moment. Then I turned off the light. Downstairs, I gathered every piece of party decor into black bags. Balloons, ribbons, banners, confetti. I worked without music, without rush, without ceremony. By midnight, the house was clean again. Not spotless, but reclaimed. I took a shower in my own bathroom, changed into clean clothes, sat on my couch, the one they had tried to replace. I'd moved it back earlier. I checked my phone, messages from neighbors, from old colleagues, from cousins who had seen social media clips before they were taken down. Questions, shock, gossip. I ignored them all. Then a new email arrived. From Base Legal. Subject fraud case status. Filed in active simple, direct. Moving forward. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the quiet settle. Not peaceful quiet, just honest quiet. No performance, no manipulation, no lies vibrating behind every smile. For the first time in months, the house sounded like mine again. Floorboards settling, refrigerator humming, pipes shifting slightly in the walls. Ordinary sounds, real sounds. I rested my head against the couch and stared at the ceiling. Not thinking about revenge, not thinking about loss. Just recognizing one fact with complete clarity. They had tried to erase me from my own life, and they failed. I woke up the next morning on my couch, not because I'd planned to sleep there, but because at some point in the night I had stopped thinking and simply closed my eyes. Sunlight came through the windows. No glitter, no balloons, no voices pretending everything was fine. Just morning. I brewed coffee in my kitchen. My kitchen. I drank it standing by the counter, barefoot on the floor I'd paid for in the house I had defended, in the life that was finally back under my name. My phone buzzed. A message from Attorney Grant. Court accepted evidence. Full restraining order approved. Property restored under exclusive ownership. Criminal proceedings initiated. Short, precise, final. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I simply nodded once to myself like a mission update received and acknowledged. Later that afternoon, I returned to base. Not for work, for paperwork. Statements, documentation, signatures that actually belonged to me. In one office, I signed the revocation of the fraudulent power of attorney. In another, I signed affidavits confirming financial exploitation. In another, I authorized cooperation with federal prosecutors. 3 rooms, 3 sets of forms, 3 different officers thanking me for my service, as if they finally understood what I'd been dealing with. When I finished, I stepped outside. The sky was clear, no dramatic music, no slow-motion walk, just normal air filling my lungs. By evening, I was back home. There was an envelope on the front mat. Ethan's handwriting. Inside was a letter. Vanessa, I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do. I've ended the engagement. I'm cooperating fully with investigators. I've canceled every contract tied to the wedding. I've also placed funds aside to help repair any damage done to your home. I know you said you don't need it, but the offer stands. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. Ethan, I folded the letter once and placed it in a drawer. Then I called him. He answered immediately. I got your letter, I said. Vanessa, I'm not taking your money, I said. Not because I don't appreciate the gesture, but because this isn't your burden to fix. Silence on the line. Then he said, You're stronger than anyone in that family ever deserved. I'm just honest, I replied. We hung up. No lingering connection, no dramatic goodbye, just closure. Over the next weeks, the world kept moving. Megan was formally charged with fraud, falsification of medical records, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit property theft. My parents were charged as co-conspirators in financial and identity fraud. There were no courtroom scenes filled with shouting, no last-minute confessions, just procedure, evidence, consequences. The family trust was frozen under investigation. My military accounts were restored. My name was cleared in every system they had tried to corrupt. One afternoon, I stood in my living room holding the last cardboard box of baby decorations that had been left behind. Pastel blankets, plastic bottles, a crib mobile shaped like stars. I didn't feel anger looking at them, just clarity. These were symbols of a future built on deception. And deception doesn't deserve a nursery. I donated everything to a local women's shelter, not out of charity, out of practicality. Real children existed. They could use real things. Then I sat on the floor of my empty living room and thought about what this house had become. A target, a battleground, a proof of survival. But it didn't have to stay that way. So I made a decision. I contacted a nonprofit organization that worked with financially abused women. I met with veteran support groups who helped service members rejected by their families after returning home. I spoke to lawyers who specialized in exploitation recovery. Within 2 months, my house had a new purpose. The front room became a legal consultation office. The dining room became a group meeting space. The upstairs bedrooms became temporary safe rooms for women escaping financial or domestic control. The garage became storage for donated supplies. No banners, no balloons, no performances. Just people walking through the front door with fear in their eyes and leaving later with planned support and names of professionals who could help them rebuild. I didn't put my name on a sign outside. I didn't announce it on social media. I simply unlocked my door each morning and did the work. Because the real opposite of betrayal isn't revenge. It's refusing to let what tried to break you define what you build next. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the evening watching the street grow quiet. Neighbors walk their dogs, kids ride bikes, ordinary life happening outside a house that once held extraordinary lies. I don't think about Megan much anymore. I don't think about my parents at all. Not because I forgave them, but because they no longer occupy space in my decisions. Family isn't blood. Family is who stands beside you when there's nothing left to gain. And I finally built one from the ground up. So let me ask you something. If the people closest to you tried to take everything you worked for, would you walk away quietly? Or would you stand your ground and rebuild your life on your own terms? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice, strength, and taking back control. I unlocked the front door one morning and realized I no longer hesitated before turning the key. For a long time, every entrance into this house carried memory. The night I was pushed out, the day the lies were exposed, the silence after everything collapsed. But that morning, my hand moved without tension. No weight in my chest, no old fear in my breath. That's when I understood something important. The hardest part of what happened wasn't losing trust in my family. It was realizing I had never truly had it. People like to believe family is automatic safety, that blood equals loyalty, that parents love without conditions, that siblings compete but never cross certain lines. It's a comforting story. It's also not always real. Some families don't break. They bend, some don't bend, they control, and some smile while quietly sharpening knives. Mine didn't become toxic overnight. They simply stopped hiding it once they thought I was disposable. I used to think I was unlucky, that I just drew the short straw in the family dynamic. The responsible child, the self-sufficient one, the one who didn't need help, the one who could handle it. But looking back now, I see the structure clearly. Megan was rewarded for needing. I was ignored for coping. She cried, they ran. I adapted, they expected. Over time, I became useful. A resource, a backup plan, a wallet, a signature, a house, not a daughter, not a sister, a function. And the moment I stopped functioning on command, they replaced me. This isn't rare. I've learned that since opening my home to others. Women who come through my door tell different stories, but the pattern is familiar. A mother who controls finances for your own good. A father who opens credit cards in your name just to help the family. A sibling who always needs rescuing, always one crisis away from demanding your stability. Most of them don't even recognize it as abuse at first. Because abuse doesn't always look like bruises or screaming. Sometimes it looks like family dinners, holiday photos. We just want what's best for you. Sometimes it looks like a pen placed in front of you with people you love waiting for you to sign your future away. The biggest lesson I learned is simple. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's access. My parents had unlimited access to my guilt, my loyalty, my sense of duty, my fear of being labeled ungrateful. And they used every inch of it. I used to believe saying no to family made you selfish, cold, heartless. Now I understand something different. Saying no is how you stay a person instead of a resource. If I had signed those papers, I wouldn't have just lost a house. I would have lost autonomy, my income, my legal identity, my ability to decide anything about my own life. That's not family, that's ownership. So here's what I want anyone listening to this to understand. If someone says, do this for the family, but the cost is always paid by you, that's not unity, that's exploitation. If someone says, you're strong, you'll be fine, every time they hand you another burden, they're not praising you. They're avoiding responsibility. If someone uses guilt as a leash, they don't love you, they manage you. And if anyone pressures you to sign documents while making you feel emotional, rushed, or ashamed for hesitating, you walk away. You take the papers, you read them alone, you ask a lawyer, you breathe, you think. Because real love doesn't fear transparency. I didn't survive this because I was special. I survived because at one moment I paused long enough to notice something felt wrong. And once you notice, you can't unsee. That's what I tell the women who sit at my kitchen table now, hands wrapped around warm mugs, voices shaking as they describe parents, partners, or siblings controlling their money and decisions. I tell them, open your own account, check your credit report, never share passwords, never sign under pressure, and never assume family means safe. None of this makes you paranoid, it makes you free. Another thing I learned is that walking away from harmful family isn't cruelty, it's clarity. We're taught that cutting contact is dramatic, that we owe endless chances, that forgiveness is mandatory, but forgiveness without change is permission for repetition. You can wish someone well and still close the door. You can release anger and still refuse access. You can stop fighting and still never return. Peace doesn't require reunion. Peace requires distance from what keeps wounding you. Today, I don't speak to my parents. I don't check on Megan. I don't follow their case. I don't wait for apologies. Not because I'm bitter, but because I've built a life that doesn't orbit them anymore. The women who come to my door now call me family sometimes. Veterans who share coffee in my living room call me sister. People who were once strangers show up for each other in ways blood never did for me. That's the truth no one tells you early enough. You are allowed to build a new definition of family, one based on respect, on choice, on protection, on honesty, on mutual care instead of mutual obligation. Family isn't who raised you. Family is who doesn't require you to disappear so they can feel important. I didn't lose a family, I lost a lie. And in the space it left, I built something real. I didn't plan on becoming someone who explains fraud prevention over coffee. But one afternoon, a woman sat at my kitchen table twisting a wedding ring around her finger and whispered, "My mother has my bank login. I don't know how to take it back." Another said, "My husband opened loans in my name. I just found out last week." Another said, "My brother keeps asking me to sign temporary paperwork for our parents' estate. I feel sick every time. Different ages, different backgrounds, same fear." That's when I realized my story wasn't unusual. It was just louder. Financial manipulation is one of the quietest forms of control. No bruises, no sirens, no visible damage at first. Just small requests, emotional pressure, family duty, love used like a master key. And by the time most people recognize it, their name is already on documents they never fully read. So I started telling them what I learned the hard way. Not as a motivational speech, as a field manual. Because protecting your life isn't dramatic, it's procedural. The first thing I explain is this. Manipulators rarely start with money, they start with trust. A parent says, "I'll handle your finances. You're too young to worry about that." A sibling says, "Just co-sign this. I'll pay it, I promise." A partner says, "Let me manage the bills. I'm better at it." At first it feels like help. Then one day you want to make a decision and realize you need permission. That's when help becomes control. If someone insists on managing your money but resists transparency, that's not support. That's a takeover in slow motion. The second thing I tell them, pressure is a red flag. If anyone rushes you to sign something, interrupts your questions, gets offended when you ask for time, or says things like, "Don't you trust me? Family doesn't need lawyers. You're being dramatic." That's not love, that's a tactic. Real agreements survive daylight. Fake ones need urgency. When my parents put papers in front of me at that table, the pressure was the warning sign, the emotional language, the audience, the guilt, the framing of duty. They needed me to sign before I thought. I didn't think because I was smarter. I thought because military training teaches you never to act under emotional fire. Most people don't get that training. So here's what I tell anyone now. If your heartbeat speeds up before you sign, stop. If your hands feel tense, stop. If you feel guilty for reading carefully, stop. Nothing legitimate disappears because you took a day to think. The third lesson, always separate emotion from paperwork. Manipulators blend the two on purpose. They hug you, praise you, remind you of childhood. Bring up sacrifices, cry, laugh, create warmth. Then slide documents across the table. Once emotion is high, logic is low. That's not an accident, it's design. So I teach this simple rule. No document gets signed in a room where someone is trying to make you feel something. Take it home, read it alone, sleep on it, show it to someone neutral, preferably a lawyer. If they object, the deal is bad. The fourth lesson, your financial identity is your real identity. Most people guard their passport more carefully than their bank logins, but stolen money can be replaced. Stolen financial identity can trap you for years. So here's the checklist I give everyone who walks through my door. Have your own bank account. Know every account under your name. Check your credit report at least once a year. Never share login credentials. Lock your credit if you don't need new loans. Set up alerts for large transactions. Store important documents where only you can access them. This isn't paranoia. This is adulthood. Another truth I learned, fraud inside families works because victims feel ashamed. They think I should have known better. I don't want to get my parents in trouble. If I report this, I'll destroy the family. So they stay silent. But silence doesn't preserve family. It preserves abuse. When I filed reports against my parents and sister, I wasn't destroying anything healthy. I was documenting what already existed. The family didn't break because I spoke. It broke because it was built on deception. That's why I tell people. Reporting fraud is not betrayal. Fraud is betrayal. You're not obligated to protect someone who is harming you just because you share DNA. And here's something else people rarely say out loud. You don't need permission to protect yourself. Not from your parents, not from your spouse, not from your siblings, not from tradition, not from culture. Your life belongs to you. Your name belongs to you. Your money belongs to you. Your signature belongs to you. Anyone who says otherwise is revealing their intentions. Today, when women sit across from me at the kitchen table, I don't tell them to be fearless. Fear is normal. I tell them to act while afraid. Open the new account. Call the lawyer. Freeze the credit. Ask the questions. Request the documents. Delay the signature. Small actions. Big consequences. Most financial abuse doesn't end with police and federal agents like mine did. It ends quietly, with a saved retirement, a protected home, a stopped scam, a boundary finally enforced. That's the victory most people need, not revenge, just control of their own lives. And once you experience that, you never again confuse love with access, because real love never requires you to surrender your freedom to prove your loyalty. One evening, I stood in the doorway of my house and watched a woman I barely knew tuck her daughter into one of the upstairs beds. The little girl hugged a stuffed rabbit someone had donated. Clean sheets, soft light, a door that locked from the inside. Safety. The mother whispered, "Thank you," like she was afraid gratitude might break something fragile. After they settled, I walked back downstairs, turned off the kitchen lights, and sat alone at the table. And it hit me. I wasn't living in the house my family tried to steal anymore. I was living in the house I chose to build after they failed. Rebuilding after betrayal isn't dramatic. It's quiet, it's slow. It's showing up every day in a life that used to feel poisoned and teaching your nervous system that you're safe now. People talk about moving on like it's a straight road. It's not. It's waking up one day and realizing you didn't think about them for 3 hours, then 6, then a whole day, then a week. Not because you forced healing, but because something new took root. When everything collapsed, I thought the loss was my family. But that wasn't the real loss. The real loss was the version of myself who believed loyalty meant endurance at any cost. That version of me is gone now, and she isn't missed. I used to think strength meant staying, tolerating, adapting, making myself smaller so others could stay comfortable. Now I know strength is walking away without needing permission. Strength is silence after truth is spoken. Strength is refusing to chase closure from people who only speak in manipulation. Strength is building a life that no longer requires their approval. Many people who hear my story ask the same question. Did you forgive them? And I always answer honestly. I don't live in anger, but I don't offer access either. Forgiveness isn't a transaction. It isn't something you owe people who never took responsibility. Peace isn't forcing yourself to reconnect with harm. Peace is waking up and realizing you're no longer waiting for them to change. Closure is something you give yourself. I closed the door. I changed the locks. I filled the house with people who treat each other with respect. That is closure. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that chosen family is not second-best family. It is real family. The veterans who drink coffee in my kitchen and talk about returning home to strangers. The women who arrive shaking and leave with legal plans and steady voices. The children who sleep safely upstairs for the first time in years. None of them share my blood. All of them share my loyalty. That's the family I built. Not out of obligation, out of intention. And here's the truth most people never hear. You are allowed to outgrow your origin story. You're allowed to become someone your past no longer recognizes. You're allowed to rewrite the rules you were born under. You're allowed to say, "This ends with me." Ending generational harm isn't dramatic. It's a series of small, stubborn choices. Not answering the call. Not signing the paper. Not accepting the guilt. Not returning to the table where you were never served. Instead, opening your own account. Finding your own community, making your own rules, protecting your own peace. I didn't rebuild because I'm fearless. I rebuilt because one day I realized staying broken would cost more than starting over. And starting over is terrifying until you do it. Then you realize freedom feels surprisingly ordinary. Coffee in your own kitchen. A quiet house. No secrets hiding behind smiles. No footsteps you fear in the hallway. No documents waiting to steal your name. Just you. Fully yourself, unowned, unmanaged, uncontrolled. So before we part, I'll ask you one question. If your life suddenly revealed that the people closest to you didn't love you as a person, but as a resource, would you keep playing your assigned role? Or would you have the courage to rebuild your world from the ground up? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about reclaiming power. Truth and the quiet kind of victory that changes everything.
Final note. This story is a work of fiction created by artificial intelligence to heighten drama and emotion. But the valuable lessons we discuss are entirely real and continue to happen to many people every day. If this style isn't for you, that's perfectly okay. Please feel free to look for other content that better suits your needs.